She tried to kick him out in front of everyone, and then he dropped a truth that froze the whole yacht. You ever had one of those nights where everything feels set up for success, and then, out of nowhere, it flips? That was supposed to be Darius Whitfield's night. 42 years old, head of a booming tech company out of Austin, Texas, and on paper, life was good. Invitations to events like this didn't come easy, and tonight was different. This wasn't just any party. It was the party. An exclusive yacht celebration hosted by one of the biggest venture firms in the country, anchored just off the coast near San Diego. Darius stepped out of the black SUV and onto the private marina walkway, adjusting the cuff of his charcoal suit. It wasn't flashy, just clean, tailored to perfection. He had that calm confidence that comes from years of building something out of nothing. As the salty ocean breeze brushed against his face, he glanced up at the yacht, 3 decks of pure luxury, glowing under a sky scattered with stars. Conversations floated over from the upper deck, laughter mixed with the clinking of glasses. For a second, Darius allowed himself to exhale. This was where he was supposed to be. As he handed his phone to security for the guest list check, one of the guards looked at him a little too long, scanning his face like he wasn't sure if he belonged. Darius noticed, but said nothing. He was used to looks like that. Still, the guard eventually nodded, gave a tight smile, and waved him through. Walking down the polished wooden dock, the scent of champagne and expensive perfume grew stronger. His leather loafers clicked against the deck as he boarded the yacht. A few guests already mingling on the main level looked his way. Some smiled politely. Others didn't. Darius caught a glance here and there, quick, sharp, like people sizing him up. He pushed it aside and headed toward the bar for a drink. Inside, the yacht was a masterpiece. Soft white lighting washed over sleek, modern furniture. The crowd was a mix of CEOs, investors, and socialites, faces he'd seen in Forbes, some he'd even sat across from at board tables. A string quartet played near the staircase while servers weaved through the crowd with trays of hors d'oeuvres. It was the kind of scene that looked like a magazine spread. As Darius moved through the room, a man in a navy suit gave him a quick nod, the kind that said, "You're not familiar, but you might be important." Darius returned the nod and kept walking. He wasn't here to impress anyone. He had nothing to prove. Tonight was about networking, maybe finding the right investor for his next big project. He stopped at the bar, ordered a sparkling water with lime, and leaned casually against the counter. Behind him, laughter burst from a small circle of guests near the railing. A woman in a gold sequin dress caught his eye for a moment, then looked away like he wasn't worth a second glance. Darius smiled faintly to himself. He knew the type. The bartender slid his drink over. "First time on this yacht?" he asked, curious but friendly. "Yeah," Darius replied, taking a sip. "Quite a setup." "Every year it gets bigger," the bartender said before rushing off to another order. Darius turned, letting his gaze sweep across the deck again. For a moment, everything seemed fine, just a high-end event, people enjoying themselves. But then he noticed something subtle, 2 women whispering and looking in his direction. When his eyes met theirs, they quickly turned away, pretending to laugh at something else. He didn't think much of it, but the vibe was there, unspoken, heavy in the air. He checked his watch. Still early. He decided to walk up to the second deck, maybe find someone he knew. As he climbed the curved staircase, a couple passed by him mid-conversation. The woman's eyes slid over him briefly, her lips pressed into a thin line before she turned back to her companion. Darius kept moving, telling himself not to read too much into it. But the truth? Something about the energy on that yacht didn't feel right, and he was about to find out just how wrong it could get. The second deck opened up to a sweeping view of the Pacific. The night was calm, moonlight rippling across the water like silver paint. Darius paused for a moment, letting the ocean breeze hit him. Down below, the faint sound of laughter and music mixed with the low rumble of the yacht's engine. It was the kind of night most people would call perfect. He scanned the deck for familiar faces. There were clusters of conversations happening near the glass railing, champagne glasses sparkling in hand. He recognized a couple of people from LinkedIn profiles, but no one he had personally met. Fine. He'd start simple. As he walked toward a small group near the bar, a man in a cream-colored blazer shot him a glance that lingered just a little too long. Not warm, not inviting. More like measuring him. Darius offered a polite smile anyway. The man didn't return it. Instead, he shifted slightly, blocking Darius's path without saying a word. Darius veered off, deciding not to make it awkward. He'd find someone else. But then it happened again. A woman in a black dress brushed past him, her eyes flicking toward him for less than a second before darting away, like she wasn't sure if he belonged here. He stopped near the bar on the upper deck and ordered another sparkling water. As the bartender prepared it, a man stepped up beside Darius. Mid-50s, expensive watch, tan like he lived on a golf course. He gave Darius a quick once-over and smirked. "You staff?" the man asked casually, like he was asking about the weather. Darius turned his head slowly. "Excuse me?" "Staff," the man repeated, motioning vaguely toward the bar. "Catering? Security? Something like that?" Darius didn't answer right away. He let the words hang there for a beat before replying. "No, guest." His tone was calm but clipped. The man raised his brows like he wasn't convinced, then chuckled softly and shook his head. "Oh, my mistake." He turned back to his drink, clearly not embarrassed. Darius exhaled through his nose, forcing his jaw to relax. He wasn't going to let one guy ruin his night. But then the whispers started to feel louder, or maybe he was just more aware of them now. He caught two people looking in his direction, their eyes sliding away, the second he glanced back. He pulled out his phone, pretending to check messages while scanning the deck for anyone he actually knew. Finally, he spotted someone. Anthony Kim, a venture capitalist he'd spoken to on a Zoom call months ago. Anthony was leaning against the railing with a group of people laughing at something one of them said. Darius felt a little relief and made his way over. "Anthony," Darius greeted as he approached, extending a hand. Anthony turned, his smile faltering for the briefest second before returning. "Darius, hey, didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah," Darius said with a light chuckle, ignoring that tiny hesitation. "Got the invite last week. Thought it'd be good to connect in person." Anthony shook his hand, but didn't introduce him to the group. The others barely acknowledged his presence, their eyes flicking to him and then back to Anthony like he wasn't part of the conversation. Darius stood there for a few awkward seconds, then excused himself politely. As he walked away, he could feel it. Eyes on his back, voices low and sharp like they were talking about him. He couldn't hear the words, but he didn't need to. He knew that tone. He leaned against the railing, staring out at the dark water, letting the cool wind clear his head. It was supposed to be a night of opportunity, so why did it feel like a test? But that uneasy vibe? It was about to turn into something far worse. Darius checked his watch, 20 minutes in, and he was still standing alone on the deck like an outsider at his own event. He reminded himself why he was here, to make connections, to open doors for the next phase of his company. The vibe wasn't great, but he wasn't about to leave over a few awkward glances and a clueless guy with a golf tan. He finished his drink and headed back toward the staircase. Maybe the lower deck would be better. He'd catch the host, shake hands, get it over with. Halfway down, he noticed her, the hostess. Slim figure, sleek ponytail, white silk jumpsuit that screamed authority without saying a word. She was scanning the crowd, her sharp eyes landing on every detail like she owned every inch of this yacht. Which, technically, she did. Her name was Brooke Spencer, big in event planning, especially for high-net-worth circles. Darius had seen her name on the email invite. He was about to keep moving when her gaze locked on him. Not casual, not curious. It was the kind of look you give when something feels off. Her steps were quick, heels tapping like a metronome against the polished floor as she closed the distance between them. "Excuse me," she said, her voice crisp, not warm. Darius turned, calm expression in place. "Yes?" She stopped just a foot away, arms crossed lightly but firm enough to say she was in charge. "Can I help you with something?" Darius blinked, slightly thrown. "No, I'm good, just looking for the host." Her eyes narrowed, scanning him from head to toe like he'd just confessed to sneaking on board. "The host?" "Yeah." He gave her an easy smile. "Got an invite. Thought I'd say hello." She tilted her head, lips curling into something that wasn't quite a smile. "An invite?" "That's right," Darius said evenly. She didn't move, didn't blink, just stared like she was giving him one last chance to admit he didn't belong. Then she said, "Look, I don't know who let you on here, but this area is for guests only." Darius kept his cool. "I am a guest." Her brows shot up like she didn't believe a word. "Really?" She took a small step closer, lowering her voice just enough so it carried a sharp edge. Listen, this is a private event. If you're working with catering or security, that's fine, but you can't just hang around like this. People are starting to notice. Something in Darius snapped, just a flicker, but he held it down. I'm not working with anyone. I was invited. Brooke crossed her arms tighter, like his calm response annoyed her even more. By who? By the people who sent out the invites, Darius said, his voice firm now. Check your list. That hit her like a challenge. Her jaw clenched. What's your name? Darius Whitfield. She pulled out her phone, thumbs flying across the screen. A beat later, she looked up, her eyes scanning him again like she still wasn't convinced. And you're saying you were invited? That's exactly what I'm saying, Darius replied, his tone steady but sharp enough to cut through her doubt. Behind her, a few guests had turned to watch. Whispers rippled through the air, soft but pointed. A man in a gray suit chuckled under his breath, like he already had the ending to this little drama written in his head. Brooke noticed the eyes too, and instead of backing down, she doubled down. Look, she said, voice louder now. I don't want to make this a scene, but if you don't have the right credentials, I'm going to have to ask you to leave. Now. Darius stared at her for a long second. He could feel the heat rising, not from anger, but from the humiliation pressing in from all sides. The people watching, the whispers, the unspoken assumptions dripping from every glance. His hand curled around the glass in his hand, then released. He wasn't going to lose it. Not here, not in front of them. I'm telling you, he said slowly, I belong here. She smirked, like that was the funniest thing she'd heard all night. And that's when the first phone camera came up, red light blinking. Because this wasn't just a misunderstanding anymore, it was turning into a spectacle. The shift happened fast. 1 second, it was just Darius and Brooke standing a few feet apart. The next, half the deck seemed tuned in, pretending not to watch while leaning just enough to catch every word. That little red light from someone's phone camera blinked like a warning signal in the corner of his vision. Brooke, noticing the attention, straightened her posture. Her voice carried now, pitched just enough to sound authoritative to the crowd. Sir, you need to tell me who gave you permission to be here. If you can't, I'm going to have security escort you off this yacht. The words landed heavy, like a punch that wasn't physical, but hit just the same. Escort you off, in front of all these people? People who already looked at him like he didn't belong? Darius felt every eye burning into his back. He inhaled, slow and steady. You don't have to do all that, he said, his tone controlled. I told you, I have an invitation. If you check your list. Brooke cut him off with a small laugh, sharp as glass. You think I don't know who's on my guest list? She glanced at the crowd, making sure they heard that. Believe me, I would remember your name. That did it. The murmurs started, low at first, then louder as whispers passed like wildfire. Someone muttered, What's going on? Another voice answered, I think he's not supposed to be here. The man in the gray suit from earlier chuckled again, shaking his head like this was premium entertainment. He wasn't even hiding it now. Darius could feel the heat crawling up his neck. He hated this feeling, the weight of being reduced, of being doubted. And the worst part? This wasn't new. Different setting, same script. Ma'am, he said evenly, I'm not trying to cause a problem, but you're making a mistake. Oh, I'm making a mistake? Brooke stepped closer, one manicured finger pointing at his chest, careful not to touch him, but close enough to sting. You walk onto my event, dressed like that, no badge, no credentials, and you expect me to just take your word for it? Not happening. That line, dressed like that, hit him harder than he expected. He was in a tailored suit that cost more than most people's rent. Yet somehow, in her eyes, he still didn't measure up. He could hear phones clicking now. A woman near the railing whispered, Is he staff or something? Another guy said, Nah, security probably missed him. Darius clenched his jaw. He'd played calm long enough. First of all, he said, his voice carrying more weight now, don't talk to me like I'm some random who wandered in off the street. You want credentials? Fine. Call whoever you need to call, but stop trying to embarrass me in front of your guests. That earned him a small gasp from someone in the back, like they weren't expecting him to push back. Brooke, though? She just laughed again, louder this time, performing for the audience. Oh, wow. You know what? I don't have time for this. She waved her hand toward the staircase. Security! And that's when the guard from earlier, the same one who checked his name, started walking over. Big guy, built like a linebacker, expression blank. Darius felt something harden inside him. Enough was enough. Before Brooke could open her mouth again, he spoke, his voice cutting through the chatter like a blade. You really don't know who I am, do you? The deck went silent. Even the music downstairs seemed to dim for a second. Brooke froze mid-step, her smugness faltering for just a blink. Excuse me? She said, her voice losing that edge for the first time. Darius turned slightly so his voice carried, not shouting, just firm, like a man who had nothing left to prove. My name, he said slowly, is Darius Whitfield, CEO of Whitfield Dynamics, the company that just signed a $50 million contract with your main sponsor. The silence that followed wasn't quiet. It was heavy, thick, like the air itself had weight. The laughter stopped. The whispers died. Every eye that had looked at him like he didn't belong was now locked on him with something else. Shock, recognition, and maybe a little fear. Brooke blinked, her lips parting, but no sound came out. For the first time all night, she looked unsure, and then just like that, the panic set in. The weight of Darius's words sank in like an anchor. Conversation stopped cold. Every glass clink, every polite laugh vanished into the night air, leaving only the hum of the yacht's engines and the quiet rhythm of the waves against the hull. Brooke's face went pale. Her confidence, the smug, icy control she had just moments ago, crumbled in an instant. Her mouth opened as if to speak, but nothing came out. She swallowed hard, eyes darting to the guests, who were now whispering furiously among themselves. Whitfield Dynamics. A man murmured from the side, his tone low, but carrying enough to be heard. Heads turned. Someone else whispered, That's the AI firm, right? The one in every tech journal? Another voice chimed in. They're killing it in predictive systems. Top 5 in the country. And then the real kicker. Wait, didn't they just land that insane contract with Alton Ventures? Alton Ventures. The name floated above the crowd like an invisible spotlight, because everyone here knew what that meant. The yacht they were standing on, the extravagant 3-tier party boat, was funded and hosted by Alton Ventures. The event wasn't just for show, it was their annual investor gala. The firm, whose logo was plastered across every cocktail napkin and champagne flute, had just inked a deal with Darius's company. That wasn't a small detail. That was the detail. Brooke knew it too. Her lips twitched, straining to pull into a smile that wouldn't come. Mr. Whitfield, she started, her voice suddenly sweet, almost syrupy, dripping with panic. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Darius didn't move, didn't break eye contact. His calm was surgical now. You think? The security guard stopped mid-step, uncertainty flashing in his eyes. He looked between Brooke and Darius like he'd just walked into the wrong room during a live broadcast. Brooke laughed nervously, a hollow sound that didn't reach her eyes. Oh my gosh, this is so embarrassing. I thought someone mentioned... What did they mention? Darius cut in, his tone sharp enough to make a few people flinch. She hesitated, biting her lip. The truth was sitting in her throat like a stone, heavy and choking, but she couldn't say it. Not here, not with a dozen cameras now aimed at her. Anthony, the VC Darius had greeted earlier, finally stepped forward, his voice low and diplomatic. Brooke, maybe check the list again. I'm sure Mr. Whitfield is... Don't bother, Darius said, his voice steady. She doesn't need a list. She made up her mind the second she saw me. That landed like a bomb. People shifted uncomfortably, eyes dropping to the polished floor, because everyone knew what he meant. They'd seen it. They'd felt the tension, too. Brooke stammered, No, that's not... I didn't... You didn't what? Darius asked, stepping closer now, his presence filling the space without raising his voice. Didn't assume? Didn't treat me like I wasn't worth being here? Didn't embarrass me in front of your guests? Brooke's mouth opened and closed, like a fish gasping for air. I made a mistake. Yeah, Darius said, his tone quiet but carrying like thunder. You did. Phones clicked, red lights blinked. This wasn't just an awkward moment anymore. It was a headline waiting to happen. Anthony cleared his throat, trying to salvage the night. Darius, let's get you a drink, okay? I'll introduce you to the board members. Brooke will... Darius held up a hand, silencing him without even looking his way. I'm good, he said, his eyes still locked on Brooke. But you're going to remember this. The tension was a living thing now, crawling through every corner of the deck. Brooke nodded quickly, her smile brittle, sweat beading at her hairline. Of course. Of course. Then, in the back, someone clapped, slow, sarcastic. A man in a gray suit, the same one who'd smirked earlier, now looked amused beyond belief. Well, he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, that was dramatic. A ripple of nervous laughter followed, weak and awkward, like people didn't know whether to laugh or run. Darius turned to him, eyes cold but calm. You think this is a joke? Graysuit shrugged, lifting his glass. Just saying, welcome to high society. We like to keep things interesting. Darius didn't answer. He didn't need to. His silence was louder than any comeback. But this wasn't over. The real fallout was just beginning, and Brooke? She was about to learn what consequences taste like. The party didn't recover after that. You could feel it. The shift. Conversations turned stiff, forced, like air leaking out of a balloon no one wanted to admit was deflating. The music kept playing downstairs, but it sounded hollow now, like background noise for a scene gone wrong. Brooke stood frozen for a few beats too long before she finally snapped into damage control mode. She plastered on a smile so tight it looked painful and stepped toward Darius, her tone suddenly drenched in fake sweetness. Mr. Whitfield, I truly apologize, she stammered, her voice almost trembling. I should have recognized your name immediately. Please, let me make this right. We can... Darius didn't move, didn't blink. His stillness was louder than any outburst. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm, but that calm was the kind that made people lean in because they knew it carried weight. Make it right? He repeated. How do you make something like this right, Brooke? Her eyes darted around, searching for an ally in the crowd, but no one stepped in. They were all watching, silent, waiting to see how this played out. I didn't mean to offend you, she said weakly, her fingers twisting together. This isn't who I am. Darius tilted his head slightly, his expression unreadable. Really? Because it looked pretty natural to me. A murmur rolled through the deck like a low wave. Phones were still out. Some guests tried to look casual, pretending they weren't recording, but everyone knew these clips were going straight to social media. This wasn't staying on that yacht. By morning, it would be trending. Anthony stepped forward again, his diplomatic smile stretched thin. Darius, Brooke's admitting she made a mistake. Maybe we can just... Anthony, Darius said without looking at him, you've known me long enough to know I don't do polite cover-ups. Anthony's smile collapsed into a sigh as he stepped back. Brooke's voice cracked now. Please, Mr. Whitfield. I can lose everything over this. This is my career, my reputation. Darius let out a short laugh, not cruel, just bitter. You worried about your reputation now? Where was that when you were humiliating me in front of your guests? She flinched like the words slapped her. I didn't know. That's the problem, Darius cut in, his voice rising just enough to carry across the deck. You didn't know. You didn't ask. You just decided. And that's what people like me deal with every single day. Silence fell again, heavier this time. You could almost hear the guilt settling on the shoulders of half the crowd. They'd seen it. They'd judged him, too. Darius took a breath, steadying himself. Then he stepped back, his voice lower now, but sharper than ever. You don't get to walk up to someone, strip them of their dignity, and call it a misunderstanding when it blows up in your face. Brooke's hands trembled at her sides. Her perfect hostess image was gone, shredded in front of the same people she'd worked years to impress. Anthony tried one last time. Darius, maybe we can... No, Darius said simply. I'm done here. He turned and started walking toward the staircase. Heads swiveled, following his every move. No one stopped him. No one dared. As he reached the railing, he paused and glanced back, not at Brooke, not at Anthony, but at everyone. His eyes swept the crowd like a mirror, forcing them to see themselves. You all talk about leadership, innovation, vision, he said slowly. But tonight, I saw the same old thing. Judgment before truth. Assumptions before facts. If this is what high society looks like, you can keep it. With that, he walked down the stairs, his steps echoing against the polished wood. The cameras followed him until he disappeared below deck. Brooke stood frozen, her face a mask of panic and humiliation. Around her, the whispers started again. Not about Darius now, but about her. Someone muttered, "She's finished." Another guest shook their head, saying, "That video's going viral." And they were right. By tomorrow, Brooke Spencer wasn't going to be known for throwing flawless yacht parties. She was going to be known as the hostess who tried to throw out the wrong man, the man her client had just invested millions in. But for Darius, this wasn't about going viral. It was about something bigger, a truth he'd been living with for years. And tonight, the world was finally going to hear it. The main deck felt heavier with every step Darius took toward the exit. The glow of the yacht lights blurred against the water as the noise behind him faded into hushed whispers. He passed the bartender, who gave him a look that wasn't pity, wasn't judgment, just quiet understanding. Darius nodded once and kept moving. At the base of the gangway, the salty breeze hit him again, cooling the heat that had been building in his chest all night. He paused, staring out at the endless black ocean before pulling out his phone. Notifications were already stacking up. Someone had posted the video, 2,000 views in 10 minutes. He could imagine the caption, "CEO humiliated at exclusive yacht party." Then this happened. He sighed. It wasn't the attention he wanted, but maybe it was the attention the world needed. "Mr. Whitfield," a voice called from behind him. He turned slowly. It was Anthony, jogging down the steps, slightly out of breath. "Listen," Anthony said, hands up like he was approaching a ticking bomb. "That was rough. Brooke's finished after this, but if you stay, we can still turn this around. I'll introduce you to the board. We'll smooth it over." Darius shook his head. "Anthony, you don't get it." "Then help me get it," Anthony pleaded. "You know how these circles work. One headline like this and everyone spins it their own way." "That's the problem," Darius said quietly. He stepped closer, his voice low but firm. "You all spin it. You make it about optics, not reality. About saving face, not fixing what's broken." He let that hang for a second before continuing. "This wasn't just a misunderstanding, Anthony. It's a mirror. And the truth, staring back at all of you, it's ugly." Anthony didn't argue. For once, he didn't have a pitch, a plan, or a smile to hide behind. He just nodded slowly, like he understood, even if he didn't know what to do with it. Darius slipped his phone into his pocket and looked out at the water one more time. "I built everything I have by staying focused, by working harder than everyone else in the room. But nights like this remind me, the higher you climb, the more some people think they have the right to pull you down." He turned back to Anthony. "Not because of what you've done, but because of who they think you are." Anthony's throat bobbed as he swallowed. "You leaving for good?" Darius nodded once. "Yeah. If someone wants to do business with me, they know where to find me. But I don't need this stage to prove my worth." And with that, he walked down the dock, each step steady, deliberate. Behind him, the lights of the yacht shimmered like a hollow promise fading in the distance. The truth is simple. Respect should never be earned by a title. It should be the starting point. Don't let assumptions write someone else's story before they even speak. We all like to believe we're better than that, but tonight's scene? It happens every day, in boardrooms, offices, and even casual spaces. The lesson? Slow down. Check yourself. Give people the dignity they deserve before you decide who they are. If you believe in that, if you believe everyone deserves that baseline respect, share this story. Talk about it. Because silence? That's how this cycle keeps going.